Okay, gonna try one more stab at this third one. I'm getting tired and becomes a little harder to concentrate. And a few times I've tried this third one and review. There's something, to use the legal term, fatal to it. Like one of the better ones I tried just now had a slip up with those pronouns. I have to be cautious with my pronouns. I'm only here to talk about what I've done. It's unwise for me to say it's like district court is the highest level at which you can start. I'm not saying that. I'm not implying or encouraging anyone else directly do what I've done. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not a licensed attorney. I can't do that. I'm just talking about my experience and shedding some light, even here from the shadows of the night. I want to add a little more clarity to the distinction between trial court and arbitration before I turn in. I've been remembering one of the first legal battles I fought. I believe it was about 6.5 years ago to the day today. It was a mediator, touching nothing on anything to do with that case, just on a break. The mediator, neutral party, was a very kind attorney, and he said something to me. I think I told him at the time, I probably never forget that, sir. I'm not going to name his name because out of respect for his privacy and his family's privacy. He's a very kind man, but he said to me, our legal system isn't perfect. I don't know, so maybe there's no such thing as a perfect legal system, but anyway, he said it's not perfect, but no matter how we feel, how impassioned we are about a dispute, it allows us to come to the table and talk about it together. And he was right. He was right. Arbitration's a good thing, even though it doesn't have a great reputation. I'm sure that the legal system isn't always fair, as a lot of people you hear say life isn't fair. That's a bit of a silly thing to say. It's hard to compare it to anything else. So it sort of is just the way it is. But if we can talk about things, that's a big step towards resolving disagreements and problems. It's when we can't talk about it that things start to build up and pressurize, and it just becomes more difficult. So in arbitration, in TVs and movies, we hear these terms in real court. Plaintiff is the person who filing that initial document. I mentioned a complaint, and the complaint has to be served along with whatever exhibits and all that. And that costs money, unless it's an assistant or a friend or a loved one or a confidant, something. Even then, still, it's distance, it's travel, it's time, it's gas mileage. And then it's defendant is the one defending. But in arbitration, it's actually called a claimant. It's the person taking action. And it's the respondent who's responding or defending. We don't hear those terms as much, but in arbitration, it's much more affordable and it's much simpler. For instance, the rules in arbitration, American Arbitration Association in California, where I have experience, is only about, I think, 39 or 40 pages long. In sharp contrast, to illustrate the extremity of difficulty of what I have done, felt compelled to do, is in the past year or so, teach myself trial court procedure and tort and defamation law in Colorado, the rules for district court are a little over 1,300 pages long. Now, not everything applies to every case, but it really is that long. Even in county court, which is the next level down in terms of seriousness, it's determined by the amount sought in the lawsuit, because in civil law, it's usually only about money. It's or some sort of equitable relief, something, want somebody to do something to balance it out, but it's really usually all it's about in civil suits. But even in county court in Colorado, the rules are, I think, over 1,100 pages long. It's wild to sit down and just dive into a document like that. It's a wild thing. It's a wild experience. But in arbitration, even if someone is, for instance, fallen on hard times and had their car and their home and their job snatched away by the rampant and absurd and unregulated fraud of a company like Uber. I will talk quite a lot about Uber in subsequent episodes. We'll go into that 18 months to the day that I fought them in arbitration and how absurd that whole thing was. But even if something horrible has happened to a person and they've fallen on hard times, it's possible, at least in California, I'm sure also in other states, to file a waiver of the fee to start. So instead of having to drop $300, which is, a chunk of change for a lot of people, it's hard to maybe imagine spending money on something like that with no guarantee of success, but I would call it a matter of social responsibility. We'll also get more into that later. It's veering us a little bit toward in a philosophical direction. But in district court, at least in Colorado, it's $466 to initiate, and that includes a jury fee. You have to pay extra if there is desire for a jury. But then even the service costs money, I mentioned earlier. But in arbitration, at least with the American Arbitration Association, it's especially if it's a big corporation defending and it's an individual consumer, the arbitration agreement, which must be emailed to the company with the demand, that's what would in arbitration be the same thing, this to serving process. Doesn't have to be, I'm losing my train of thought. I'm tired. It doesn't have to be paid for. So it's much more affordable, and that makes it a good thing, because there is so much that is so daunting about a real court case. It's hard to imagine someone doing what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. And yeah, I really believe it's not about winning or losing. It's about standing. It's about remembering that that's what America is first, is standing together against tyranny and oppression. I'm going to say that over and over. That's what we are. That's what America is really about. And I think so many of us now are losing sight of that, and we don't know how we can help out. And I'm not encouraging anyone to do what I've done, of course. It's not why I'm here, but it is possible, and we'll keep doing what we're doing, keep doing our best. So now I'll say good night, 1,000 times good night, and we'll see you again very soon, whether in the shadows like this